Yeah, so I think what I'd like to do is just start with the meditation again. Is that all right with you guys? And then we'll get that in. We'll do the easy meditation, which is the first exercise that he went through. And then what I was thinking is maybe if and when I have time, I'll just do a separate recording of the second one, which is always the more challenging of the meta meditations, when you choose people that are harder for you, you know. Um, but it's usually best to kind of get the first part down pat first so that you really can engage with the feelings and then apply them in a beneficial way when you're working with people that are hard for you, that are challenging for you. Because what you don't want to do, which I will just say now, what you don't want to do is spend 20 minutes doing a meditation that you're reinforcing a bunch of positive and angry feelings, you know what I mean? So it's really important to play with the concepts. You know, there's lots of meta meditation recordings that you can work with, but once you get familiar with engaging those positive emotions and those constructive feelings, then you begin to stretch a little bit. And, you know, I really haven't pushed us too much during these classes because, you know, in the heal meditation, the L is linking. And we really haven't done a lot with the linking. I'm hoping that if you guys feel like there are things for you to work on, you'll, you know, kind of do that on your own. But that's really where the meat of the transformation comes in, right? Is when you can start to invite things that we struggle with a little bit and hold that in your awareness while you're aware of that and feeling calm and feeling loving and feeling compassionate and that sort of thing. So this would be another way to sort of work with that, where you're able to, you know, and the way that I think about it is it basically links, or it starts to condition us to be able to hold, to be steady, you know what I mean? To be able to engage with our goodness and our love and our caring and our kindness, and become familiar with what that feels like and really embody those feelings so that we're an oasis of that. You know what I mean? We have some integrity in being able to maintain that inner space. And then we can engage with all of these things that challenge us to grow. Okay. And the growth really occurs when we can stay centered and be aware of the challenging material and bring that compassion and that kindness and that empathy and that, you know, understanding to those difficult situations. And that's really in the end what transforms us, is that when we can begin to move the bar, you know, move the bar of what's hard for us. And we start by inviting things that are just challenging enough to push us a little bit. And then when that feels easy, then we move to the next thing and we move to the next thing. So, so don't forget about the linking part of it, even though we haven't been doing that a lot in the classes. I haven't been pushing too much because, again, I had a couple people tell me that they were having trouble with, how would I say it? You know, like they were losing the steadiness of the good feeling when they were trying to do the linking part of it. Do you know what I mean? Which is normal, you know, that's the growth part of it. But I think it's just, you know, because we're going through the chapters really quickly, I want to give us all a chance to really get solid with holding the positive information. And then maybe you can, for example, go back through and listen or read through the chapters and push yourself kind of to the next level, because that's when you're going to start seeing different kinds of growth, you know, where you begin, once you're working with that on a regular basis, to notice that, gosh, you know, things that used to be hard for me really aren't hard for me in the same way anymore, because I've, you know, started to reprogram how I'm responding to those things, and increasing my capacity to deal with stressful situations and challenging emotions and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, all of that is to say, we're going to start with his version of what basically is kind of a meta meditation with Heal. And then you can kind of keep an eye on the website, because what I'll do is I'll try to just do a separate recording with the more challenging version of it. And then you can just kind of play with it and see where your edge is. But I can tell you, you know, when I started really, really intensely working with Tonglen, which I think all of you maybe have done Tonglen with me by now. That's similar in the sense that you're, you know, wishing for, you know, you're working with compassion, right? You're wishing for people to be free of suffering. And I was working with somebody at the time that was really mean to me, you know, and it was hard, but it was also very liberating. And every day I just kept doing it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And when you stay with it and you allow yourself to be able to genuinely generate that kind of understanding and compassion for people that don't treat you, that aren't treating you nicely, right? That are really hard for you. There's a lot of increase in your capacity then to deal with other people that maybe on the periphery you're seeing are doing naughty things that used to bother you, but they're not so close, you know? So working with it regularly is really what increases your resources in that way. And so that would be an example of how you might use kind of some of the ideas that he was introducing this week with the compassion meditation that he's doing, and working with somebody that maybe you're, you know, having a hard time with, or you're arguing with, or you know, have a long history with, that you're working to forgive them, you know, because that heals you, right? Forgiveness heals me. So that would be, don't forget to go the extra step to do those things, even though we're not going to do that tonight. Okay, so I just want to bring us back to that, because we've got 3 more weeks after this. That's exciting, right? The last 3 chapters are all about how we engage with the outside world, right? Ideas of doing that. So tonight's the last chapter where we're talking about how to think about things, how to reframe things, how to work with our inner experiences and our inner thoughts. So yeah. All right, well, let's start with the exercise. Okay, so find a seat. Close your eyes. Get comfortable. And just first start by finding a good meditative posture where your spine is straight. Your shoulders are above the hips. The crown of the head lift toward the sky. And as you're sitting tall and straight, you also feel grounded. So feel your sit bones. How you're steady in your seat. Notice a feeling of balance in the body. Notice the feeling of balance in the mind that already exists. See if you can find that and bring it to the forefront. Notice a feeling of balance that already exists in the emotional body. And invite yourself to become more aware of this balanced state. And now enjoy the breath. Enjoy the breath. Lengthening the inhales and exhales. Bringing fresh oxygen to the body. Brightening the mind. And relaxing the body. Now bring to mind someone who has helped you, such as a friend or a parent or a teacher. Someone that you feel a natural fondness towards, that has shown kindness towards you in some way. When you have them clear in your mind's eye, allow yourself to just be aware of the challenges this person may be facing. Stress, pain, any kind of discomfort or unease. And as you become aware of this, find a tender-hearted concern for them. Perhaps with some soft thoughts such as, may you not suffer. May this pain pass. May your health improve. May your trouble dissipate or resolve easily. And as you stay with this image and this thought, this compassionate thought, this wish that they would be free from suffering, begin to embody and intensify the experience. Place a hand on your heart. And allow yourself to experience what it feels like to embody this tender-hearted concern for them. This wish that they would be free from any trouble. Allow that to fill your awareness. And allow it to sink into you, this tender-hearted feeling, this open-hearted feeling. And notice what feels good about this tender-heartedness. Breathing into this feeling. And now shift from compassion to kindness, to wishing that the person would be happy. Inside yourself, find a friendliness or perhaps a lovingness. And you might think something like, may you be at peace, may you be successful, may you know you're loved, may you be happy. This is kindness, wishing happiness for them. Allow yourself to embody and intensify this experience of kindness. Allowing this sense of kindness to sink into you, to become a part of you. And notice what feels good about kindness. What feels good about wishing other people to be happy? Now allow yourself to bring a new person to mind. Maybe a different friend or your partner, a relative. Be aware of this person's burdens, disappointments, or sufferings. And allow yourself to open to this same tenderheartedness, to this sense of compassion, with warmth in your heart and supportive thoughts, such as, may you feel less stressed. May you be free of suffering. And repeat this process that we just did with this new person. First with compassion, the wish that they would be free of suffering. Feeling a warm-heartedness towards them. And now also find a sense of kindness and affection. Wishing that they be happy. Know what compassion and kindness feel like in your body. and let them establish themselves inside of you. Let kindness and compassion establish themselves inside of you, sinking into you and becoming a part of you. Next, choose someone that you feel neutral about. So maybe this is somebody that you know that you don't have particularly strong feelings for, or maybe it's just somebody that you saw today, someone at the grocery store or one of the places that you were. And imagine this person's losses, loneliness, pain, or the suffering that they might be feeling, and find compassion for them. Find a warm-heartedness and a wish that they would be free from any suffering that they might be experiencing. And now also find some kindness and goodwill for them, wishing that they would be happy, that they would experience the causes of happiness. You might think, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease, or just may you be truly happy. And now simply rest in a general sense of compassion and kindness, not focusing on any one person. Imagining waves of sweet concern, warmth, friendliness, and love rippling out from you. Sense that as you inhale, lovingness flows into you. And as you exhale, lovingness flows out from you. Be aware of whatever is enjoyable, beautiful, or valuable in this experience. Give over to compassion and kindness and let these carry you along. Again, just take a few moments to notice what feels good about compassion and kindness. How does it feel in your body? How does it feel in your mind, your emotions? What do you notice? And then as you stay with the nice feelings that you've generated here, bring your awareness to your physical body, your breath, and some gentle movement into your fingers and toes. Allowing your awareness to just rest at your feet for a moment. Feel what it feels like to be totally in your body with your awareness down towards your feet. And then allow your awareness to come back up to your heart center gently, fully in the body. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. So the title of tonight's chapter is Intimacy. And it was sort of interesting to me how he kind of labeled that, right? How he framed intimacy. And I think what I want to do for most of the discussion, unless there's some things in particular we can kind of pick up on that you guys want to discuss a little bit more, we'll sort of jump towards the end, because I think that there's a little bit maybe more helpful discussion that we can sort of different ideas that we can share about that might be things to think about for the week, and in light of not only our personal experiences internally and at home, but also in the broader scope of what's going on in the world right now. The first thing that I want to mention or sort of remind us of before we get into that is that he starts out by talking about intimacy and how we develop the capacity for deep intimacy by working to be very secure in ourself, okay, in our autonomy. And I think that that's something that we maybe don't need to talk a lot about, because I think we've been sort of addressing that all along the way. But the main point to consider and to sort of contemplate, I think, in our daily life and as we're working with these ideas, is what the truth is behind that idea, because I think so many times, whether it's human nature or just the way that we've been taught to think about things, I don't know. But when we think about intimacy and relationships, right, especially with romantic partners, we tend to pursue those and engage with them from this sort of sense of feeling like I want someone to complete me. You know what I mean? I want somebody to give me something, and of course there's a part of us that wants to share, ourselves with somebody else as well, which is very intimate. But what he brings up is the idea that in order for us to really be able to have deep intimacy with another person, we have to ultimately have a very clear sense of who I am on my own. What do I stand for? We have to be in our own power, really, right? So that we are able to be stable and interact with the people around us and the relationships that we have, with a dynamic that's more about connecting and relating rather than what we can take and give. Do you know what I'm saying? And when you can go down that rabbit hole for a very long time, but, he starts by talking about the idea of autonomy. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be steady in who I am and what I need and how I take care of myself? And from this place of being whole, then you are able to have deeper, intimate connections with people, because in the process of feeling whole, right, we heal a lot of things inside of us. And so we're able to be more authentic. We have less, fears about things, right? Because we've addressed those in certain ways. And so we've, talked a lot about how we might work with that kind of dynamic in our own internal environment in previous chapters. And we feel in control of our life, and from that space, we have a much higher capacity to engage in healthy ways with the people that are close with us. With a lot less dysfunction, And we are able to communicate more effectively. And when we have a clear sense of who we are, and we have come to a point where, at least at some level, that's, more advanced than where we were before as we're working through life, when we're more stable in that way, we're able to be present with other people without getting triggered so much, right? We allow them to be who they are without trying to control them, right? Because we have control of ourselves. And so we don't feel as thrown off when things on the outside aren't agreeing with, what we think we want or what we think we need, that sort of thing. So I'll just sort of put that out there as something to sort of keep in mind as we're thinking about these things this week. Because I think that's a really key component that we always come back to. I mean, no matter how many times we know that in a certain way, I think that it's a helpful thing to kind of keep in the back of our awareness, so that when we're having intense discussions, like we won't say an argument, but we're having intense discussions, right? Then we can just be aware of, how am I engaging? And am I standing in my own power, right? Am I being empathetic to the other person, right? Because if we don't have compassion and empathy for our own suffering, we really can't have that for, the people that are close with us in the same way. It's harder for us to be understanding and open and not threatened by their normal ups and downs too. So I thought that was a really important way for him to open the chapter in talking about our autonomy and how we continue to work with developing our sense of autonomy. And, he doesn't talk about this so much in this book, but, what I always think is important, and sort of the way that I tend to phrase it and things that we've done before, and the way that I think about my own dynamics, is in what ways are we giving our power away to other people, and we do that in many ways, right? And the most superficial way that we think about that is that we allow, we don't take responsibility for ourselves, but the other way that we give our power away is by expecting somebody else to make us happy, because that's my responsibility, and of course we are here to help each other achieve that. But what are our expectations? And if we have autonomy and we have a certain relationship with ourself, right, that we're working with, when we have challenging discussions and we're just going through the normal process of life and growth and growing with each other, not just with ourselves, to be aware of when you're looking for somebody else to fix you. You know what I mean? Which is really giving your power away. When you say, you're not making me happy. Okay. Like, how do you word things? That's usually a good indication of, where that part of you is residing, because we're not saying you don't acknowledge you have needs or desires or things that you wish that you would have in your relationships with either your, spouse or your work partners or whoever it may be. But it's how we think about that, and it's important, I think, to ground ourselves in that idea before we get into the next 3 chapters where we're talking about engaging with other people. Because if you have a clear perspective, at least to the degree that you're able to work with that at this point, about, where you're able to work and where your power really lies. Your power lies in, what I do and how I feel on the inside, and how do I take responsibility for my own happiness, and what do I have control over. Mm-hmm. And then we can have conversations with people around us that are productive. Okay. They're less reactive. We can have more empathy, more compassion, more understanding. We're better able to let go of our beliefs and our opinions in order to entertain what other people might be feeling. So that ground of autonomy is really a vital foundation for all of that. The next thing that I want to sort of dive into, and I'll segue into it by just offering you sort of a phrase, right? That's a very common one that we hear in yogic texts when we talk about the wish for all beings to be free of suffering and the wish for all people to be happy, right? One of the main realizations around the ability to have that wish is that we're all the same. Okay. And so many times we are encouraged or conditioned or, habitually act as, when we look at other people, we focus on how we're different. right? We focus on how we're different. And that does something very different to our interactions and very different to our system of judgments and opinions. And really, in this chapter, what he's offering up is the idea that, again, is very common in yogic texts, that we're all the same. We're all the same, regardless of everything else, all of the other details. We're all the same, and that we all want to be free from suffering, and we all want to be happy, right? And so when it comes down to it, in the end, that's true for every living person on the planet, every living being on the planet. That drives all of our actions, really, if you think about it. It's this sort of, those are the main drives for self-preservation, okay? And then we act in ways that we think are going to help us achieve those things. So when we're working with intimacy and developing these skills for being able to deeply connect with people, obviously we want to deeply connect with people that are close with us, but also what would it be like to be able to really feel an authentic compassion and kindness towards everyone in the world, right? Because we notice and we know that everyone just wants to be free from suffering, just like me. That's why they're doing what they're doing. No matter what my opinions are about how they're doing that, that's why they're doing what they're doing. They want to be happy, just like me, which is why they're doing what they're doing, regardless of what my opinion is about what they're doing. All right. And if you can allow yourself to just come back to that, it makes it a lot easier to empathize with people and to have compassion for people, and ultimately really just to be kind to them, to be kind to them. And being kind is good for us. It's good for your own heart. Working with these ideas, when you stretch yourself, right, to increase your circle of concern, that allows you to grow the soft-heartedness that you have, right, to expand your capacity for soft-heartedness. And then that flows over in so many beautiful and wonderful ways into your close circle. You're able to be more open and available to those around you. You're able to be more caring and understanding when there are differences. So I think if we remember one thing for this week, it would be that, how often can we remember we're all the same? We're all the same, just like that. And then as we know that, and as we try to stay in that mindset and that state of being and that state of awareness, then we venture out into the world with unilateral virtue, which is what Kathleen brought up at the beginning, right? That's how he ended the chapter. And, he sort of presents the idea in the context of, him doing couples counseling and things like that, right? So the example that he uses is, you have a strained marriage, and, the one person is saying, well, I need this from you. And the other person says, well, I need this from you. And then the other person says, well, I want you to give me this. And they say, well, fine, I'll give you that when you give me this, right? And then you're kind of in a stalemate. So, in how many different ways do we do that? And, what I'm thinking of when I'm reading this chapter right now in the context of our sort of global experience is, how does this idea of unilateral virtue apply to everything that we do, every way that we interact, every conversation that we have? Because if we wait for the world to change so that we feel vindicated, or we feel, like it deserves us being nice to it, it's not going to change. Then we're just in the same cycle. That's what the cycle is, So we have the power to change the cycle. Okay. Cycles are just patterns that are repeating over and over and over and over again. And the patterns repeat because we're doing the same things, all the time. They might have slightly different flavors. So if we decide that we want things to be different, then the question is, where's my power, and how do I take unilateral steps to contribute in positive ways to my relationship with my spouse, my relationship with my boss, my relationship with my community, and my relationship with the world. Even if you're not directly verbally communicating with the rest of humanity, you are having an ongoing conversation with them right now in your mind every time you watch the news, every time you look at your Facebook feed and you have a judgment about what you're seeing, right? What somebody else is doing and why they're doing it, and what you think about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and if they're right or if they're wrong, right? And then I think a lot of times in that context, it's actually easier for us to feel disempowered. It may not be as intense in the same way as, somebody that you're sharing a house with, but it feels so large. It feels so large that you can feel kind of disempowered. And it's so always coming back to like, where's my power and what can I do? What is my responsibility? And then from there, if you are meeting your responsibilities, then that's all you really can do. You can't change other people's minds. You can't make somebody think something different. You live by example, is what I would say. Okay, you live by example. And the way that we all set a good example, and then we change the world because of the way the world comes to us, the way that we experience the world. We encourage people to behave better by behaving better, right? Somebody's got to hold that space. So this is really, for me, what a lot of the chapter could definitely relate to right now. So you can sort of apply it to, wherever you are, but I would encourage you as we're going about the next couple of days and weeks and months and, hopefully not years, but, who knows, right? Just remember, we're all the same. We're all the same, and we're just all trying not to suffer, and we're trying to be happy. And what can I do to contribute to alleviating the suffering of the world, alleviating the suffering that I'm experiencing, alleviating the suffering of the people around me, and to contribute to happiness in some way? And so he, you can kind of read through the last part of the chapter to sort of review that and kind of think about what's interesting to you as far as how to apply that right now. But one of the things that I like that I want to close with are that he gives really tangible steps. Okay, so how do I successfully live unilaterally? Because that's the question, right? It's especially the question if you're feeling strained, like if you're feeling not happy and you're trying to take the steps to remedy that, okay? How do you successfully accomplish that when you decide, I'm going to take responsibility for what I'm responsible for, and I'm going to take action, positive action based on that? So the first thing, which isn't technically part of the steps, but you have to do before you do the steps, is you have to figure out who you are, right? Do you guys remember that he was talking about that? Who am I? What am I doing here? And what do I think a virtuous life looks like? Okay. And in the context of Erin, right? In the context of insert your name, what does that look like? What is my path here? Holding this line of kindness, tenderheartedness, compassion, empathy, responsibility. And so you might decide to sort of write a story about that for yourself, sit down and do it. I can tell you it's a really powerful exercise. Dan and I'll just tell, do you care if I tell a little personal story? You don't care, right? It's entertaining at least, right? Care. Do you care? It's not about you though. Just kidding. It's not about you. I won't tell Dan's personal stories. He can do that himself. But what we were talking about the other day, because I was, recently I've done a bunch of interviews for like professional interviews, and Dan was listening to one of them that just got posted, or one of them that I just recorded the other day, where, I was just talking about A little bit about myself and about my spiritual, practices and life philosophies and how I got where I am and all this kind of stuff. And, when he listened to it, he said at the end, he's like, gosh, I'm really surprised and happy to hear how easily you share all of that those things that I used to protect really closely, right? Like I used to sort of segment the pieces of myself to sort of protect them really, because there is fear around judgment, right? Fear around what other people would think or what they would say. And I went through a very deliberate process at one point because I recognized that all the ways that we fragment ourselves, right? All the ways I was fragmenting myself was making me unhappy, right? And I wasn't really being effective because you can't really be fully autonomous when you're segmented that way, when you're fractured. So I'm bringing it up because the process that I went through is basically exactly what he's describing in a certain way. It's deciding, who am I? What do I stand for? And what does that look like in the world? Okay. And then once you've sort of written all of that down, like, who am I and who do I want to be? Who do I want to be in this world? And then you just decide what that looks like and you decide to do it. And you decide that it's okay, right? And once you accept that part of yourself, right? And once you sort of put those pieces together, it's much easier to stand in that space and to be autonomous, and then to go out and act unilaterally, right? Because you're less affected by other people's opinions, you're less affected by the dramas that are going on around you. So I would just offer that as a really helpful exercise that you guys might want to consider doing if you haven't before. And it's helpful to kind of redo it because we change and we grow all the time, right? But just to write down, who am I and who do I want to be and how do I become that? How do I be that? And then you act that way regardless, because that's your truth. He's really talking about standing in your truth, the truth of who you are and what you're here to do and how you can serve the world with that. And everybody, that's going to look a little bit different. So when he talks about, I don't remember really how he words it, but when he talks about sort of figuring out your ethics, I think maybe is the word that he uses, or your virtues and how you think that you should act, or what a person that was acting virtuous would do, then you can implement these next steps that he sort of tops off the chapter with. Okay. Does anybody, before we go through those last couple steps, have any questions or comments or thoughts about those ideas? Does anybody feel kind of freaked out by that? Does it feel empowering to you? How does it feel?
And I just want to say, for me, it's very comforting because I always looked at being kind as being as a weakness.
Yeah.
And then when I find out it's more of a power, it just is very comforting to me. So I'm free to be kind.
Yeah. I would say that the biggest strength that anybody could ever have and be able to express is kindness. Look what's going on around us. It takes a lot of strength and conviction and clarity to be able to act with kindness amidst all the chaos that's going on. And that's really what the world is calling us to do. That's our best gift, is if we can figure out what that means for us. Yeah. So then the question is, how do we successfully live unilaterally? So there'll be 4 steps, which you can apply either to your, personal relationships, or you can think about them in the context of the world at large, your career or some kind of bigger picture that way. So number 1, fill your cup. Okay. So here he comes back again to self-compassion and to recognizing your needs and understanding that you have a responsibility to fill your cup. so that you have the capacity to be kind and to be compassionate. And so get enough sleep, eat the right foods, do the things that you need to do in order for your cup to be full. Meditate, nurture your spiritual practice if that's important to you. I would I'm of the opinion that it's important to everybody, although spiritual practice may look different, for everybody. There's something that you, to connect to your soul, that kind of grounds you and empowers you in a certain way. So don't neglect that. And I think that's self-explanatory. Again, he has a little paragraph about that. So that's number one, fill your cup. Number two is related, and he says that it's basically to clear the obstacles. That's not how he words it, but he says to think about the things that have made it hard for you to express unilateral virtue in the past and remedy those. Okay, so let's say, I think the example he uses is, let's say you notice that if you've had a glass of wine, you are not in your top form to be having an intense emotional discussion with your husband, right? Because your capacity to hold that space of virtue and compassion and empathy is maybe diminished. So if you notice that is a thing for you, then you would be aware to not recreate that situation. Okay. Maybe when you're overexhausted or you haven't been physically taking care of yourself, whatever the case may be. So just to think about what your obstacles are that make it difficult for you to offer yourself to the world in the way that you want to. And think about the things you can do to remove those obstacles, to clear the clouds, I think maybe is how he worded it. So the third thing is to stay on target. Okay. So the long and short of that is to remember what you're doing. Remember not to criticize other people. Okay. So don't throw yourself out there like that. Stay on target, stay focused, and just remember, I am acting unilaterally according to my ethics and my values and my mission here. And I am going to focus on that. I am not going to criticize other people and the way that they're doing things because I remember why they're doing them. Why? Because we all want to be happy and we all want to be free from suffering. So you just notice what's happening and you do your thing. So just stay focused, always coming back to that. Okay, focused and staying in your power. Focused on your responsibilities is the way that he words it. And then the fourth thing is he says to consider and address other people's requests or complaints. Okay, so obviously in a close relationship, a personal conversation or communication, that would mean one thing. I would offer that there is a helpful way to think about sort of, what the world is asking for you, of you right now. What are the, the complaints that you're seeing or the requests that you're hearing from your work environment, from your community, from the world around you. And, really, I think the important piece of this is to understand that there's value in putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, okay? Having empathy for them, okay? So that you don't get very wrapped up in being self-important, right? Because while you're standing in your power and you're being responsible and you're being ethical, you're not doing it to be self-righteous, okay? You're not doing it because you're better than other people. You're doing it because you're humble and you understand that we're all the same because we all want to be free of suffering and we all want to be happy. And so when you're seeing suffering, whether that's a complaint that somebody is voicing or a request for some assistance, then you can, have a perspective that places some degree of importance on generating compassion and empathy in the sense of um, empathy. Empathy is such a long discussion. It can be a really tricky trap for people to get caught into that. But it's important to be empathetic, because if you're not empathetic, you have a psychological problem, really. You know what I mean? It like gets really messed up. And I think a lot of times we feel really overwhelmed. And so we try to shut that off, like we just don't want to look at it because it hurts. Because empathy is different than compassion, in the sense that empathy really quite literally means that your pain is my pain. You know what I mean? And so what I'd offer you to consider as you're working with this, without getting into a 2-hour discussion about it, is that it's possible to engage with empathy in a way that's healthy and balanced, that really leverages the power and the importance of it, which is to be able to understand what it's like to be in somebody else's position. Okay. So if you feel their pain as your pain, you then can have compassion for them in a different way. Okay. And there's a way that you can engage with that awareness, right? The appreciation for what they must be feeling. Okay. I can imagine what you're feeling. Your pain is my pain, is sort of the next step into that. And then you want to take that and go right into compassion, really, which is the wish to alleviate their suffering. So then what can I do? Okay, then that puts you back in your power. But empathy is a really important bridge for us to be able to really authentically converse with, the people that are having different experiences from us that we don't feel we can relate to, and that particular issue in part 4, right, the 4th step. If you think about that in the current global context, it's just to think about, in what ways am I struggling with harsh judgment or anger that's coming up, or defensiveness, or whatever the case may be, and how can you help yourself to find a little bit of understanding and a perspective that can genuinely get you to the point of compassion. And in order to genuinely get you to the point of compassion, there's some part of you that has to be able to say, I can imagine what that would feel like. I can imagine the pain that they must be feeling. And so while I might not agree with what they're saying or what they're expressing or what they're doing, I can empathize with that and have compassion for it. And then I don't have to get wrapped up in that, but it also allows you to disengage from all of the dysfunctional emotions that aren't productive, like blame, anger, negative judgment, all the kind of messy things that are, going around a lot right now. Okay. So I think I'll just leave it at that. It's probably quite enough.